Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Andy Curry. Today, I am fired up because I have with me professional speaker Tys Bennett, who has been speaking professionally for 6 years. The content he speaks on is sales and leadership. He speaks in the U.S. and also internationally. He is based out of Utah. He has written 3 books. The first one is called The Power of Influence. The second one is The Power of Storytelling. The third one is The 2 Most Important Days of Your Life. I want to hear about that one for sure. And he has another one coming out around January. It is in the works. And Ty, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
We are really happy you're here, Ty. Let's talk about your speaking business. Who are you talking to? Who is your audiences? What are you telling them, and how are you helping them?
That's a good question. So I primarily do keynote speeches. I do a couple of half-day and full-day trainings here and there, but mostly just keynotes. And I'm speaking typically to sales and leadership groups. So I don't know, if I think about next week, I've got 5 speeches next week, and I'm speaking to financial advisors the first day, and I'm sharing with them some storytelling techniques from my book, The Power of Storytelling. And I personally believe that storytelling is the most influential form of communication because it engages people emotionally. And we all know people buy based on emotion. They make decisions, they take action based on emotion. And so I share some specific ideas how to craft a story, some of the ways that you bring a story to life. How do you add dialogue? How do you make the characters more relatable? How do you create an emotional dynamic in your story so that it truly moves people? How do you take out the unnecessary details? I think there's a great rule that so many people seem to resonate with that I always teach, and that's that if it's not necessary to say, it becomes necessary not to say. And how do you can make your message more concise and really connect? And so I do that a lot with sales audiences, and that's based on my book, The Power of Storytelling. So that'll be for me next Tuesday. On Wednesday, I'm speaking in the morning for the managers of a staffing company, and in the afternoon for the managers of a bank. And with that, I'm speaking on leadership. My new book that's coming out in January is called Partnership is the New Leadership. And I'm going to be sharing with them some ideas on how they can approach leadership as a partnership with their people. And the whole reasoning behind that, I conducted a survey over the last 5 years. This was kind of the genesis of this book, where I asked leaders, more than 5,000 leaders in multiple different industries, one question. And the question was, what do you want from your people? And 75% of the leaders came back, and what they want is commitment, right? That's what we want from our people. We want people to be committed, to be engaged, to get the job done, to work hard. And the interesting thing is that commitment has more to do with the leadership approach than anything else, because people are ultimately committed to people. And so I'll share some concepts on how they can grow their influence, how they can build deeper relationships with their people, how they can involve their people. I'll teach them that people support what they help create. And so it's not just involvement at the stage of execution, but involvement at the stage of creation. I think great leaders engage people all along the way, and therefore they have their full commitment. So that'll, for me, will be Wednesday. Then Thursday, I'm in Colorado, and I'm speaking to a group of fundraising professionals. And going back to the storytelling topic, how do they use stories in raising funds? I mean, in essence, it's kind of a sales process, but a little bit different because of the nonprofit sector that they're in. But these guys have amazing stories to tell. I mean, I had a chance to work with the Children's Hospital in Colorado and help them with their fundraising campaign and the story that they were telling, and just the emotional, amazing work that they're doing. If they can learn to tell those stories, it's just powerful. And then Friday, I'm speaking at the SHRM conference, and I'm speaking on the power of influence. And on the power of influence, I'm speaking to a group of leaders, managers, HR professionals, and how do they grow their influence with people? I personally believe that leadership has much more to do with influence than it does position, title, or authority. People follow people, not titles. And so how do we grow our influence with people? How do we move them? How do we get them to buy into us? I think that's what truly our influence. It's all about specific ways that you can grow your influence. I teach them ideas such as focusing on being interested, not interesting, to make it about the other person, and to practice the platinum rule of relationships, which is to treat other people the way they want to be treated. When we individualize our leadership approach and we lead people on an individual basis, we have much more ability to influence them because we care enough to understand them and we care enough to go the extra mile and treat them the way that they want to be treated. And so that's kind of how my career goes. I'm with a lot of different audiences, primarily keynotes at sales or leadership conferences. I'm typically either the opening keynote or the closing keynote. I like to have fun, and there's some great entertainment factor, but also some great content that they're going to pull out of it. And whether I'm speaking on leadership, how to grow your influence, or how to partner with your people, or I'm speaking on storytelling and how to increase your sales through learning how to tell better stories and engage your prospect or your audience, that's what I'm doing on a constant basis.
Okay, neat. Now, as far as the influencing, because you said two things that were key, make sure everybody heard that, is show interest instead of being
interesting.
Yeah, being interesting. There you go. What was the other thing you said? Treat people how you'd like to be treated.
The platinum rule of relationships. I think most people think of the golden rule, right, which is to treat other people the way that you want to be treated. But the platinum rule is really a step above. It's to treat other people the way they want to be treated.
Okay. Now, I'm going to throw you a little curve and ask you something about that. As far as leadership goes and influence, what's going on right now in the news with Donald Trump? I'm sure you've been watching that. I would have to say those two things that you just said, doesn't seem to me he's doing that, but yet he's having influence. What would you say about that?
Yeah, politics, I think, is an interesting thing. I think my personal take right now with Donald Trump is, in a lot of ways, he's garnering influence or votes or attention because he's contrasting what so many people are used to. And I think because some people are fed up with politics, the contrast is appealing. I don't know if it'll be appealing in the long run, but in the short run right now in polls, he seems to be getting some attention. And you look at some of the polls that are coming out, and ultimately it seems that people are in a default mode. They're struggling so much with politics, and they don't like any of the candidates, that it's almost like, this guy's out there, so why not? So it's interesting. But in a long term, in a leadership role that the majority of us deal with, we have to be able to be in a position where we develop deeper relationships, right? We're not running for president to be the figurehead and the spokesperson of a country. We're managing a team. We're running a business. We're engaging with our clients. And so those relationship building tools, I think, matter. Now, I think they matter on the large scale as well. And I've never interacted with Donald Trump on a personal basis to know what he's like behind the persona that he's putting out on stage right now. Mm-hmm. But I think that in some ways it's default and contrast that's really driving it.
I would say so, and I think the contrast too. Just as a side note, not worrying about being politically correct. It's definitely something that the other politicians are so concerned about. But anyway, that's beside the point. As far as your storytelling, that fascinates me because as children, we were told all kinds of stories, and I think that's something that is built into us, is we like to listen to them. Can you give, because one of the things you said was you need to learn to take out the points that don't matter, to really condense your story to make it as powerful as possible. So can you give a few tips on your storytelling and how to make it better?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I think where we do that is we typically, in the setup of a story, we add in so many extra unnecessary details. we start off a story and say, I have a friend who lives in I think he lives in Denver. No, I think is it in Colorado? It's somewhere in Colorado. And just all these unnecessary things where you lose people from the get-go, right? Instead of just jumping in. One of the things I love to teach people is there's a model. There is a simple formula that every influential story follows, and it is struggle to solution. Struggle to solution. So the model is that you, from an influence standpoint, is you hook people with the struggle, and then you help them with the solution. If the struggle is relatable, the solution will be credible. So what we often do is we don't get to the struggle fast enough, or we leave it out. In business, a lot of times, if I'm presenting my company or what I do to you, we want to come from a power position. So in essence, our story sounds something like this. You know what? I'm great. We've always been great. We do great things for our clients. And if you work with us, it'll be great. Okay. And there's nothing really emotionally engaging about that, right? We want to sound like we're doing incredible things. But the truth is, you're in business and I'm in business and everybody's in business because we solve a problem, right? There's a struggle that exists. Right. And so if we can address that, and we can be a little bit more authentic and real and connect with the emotion of what that potential prospect is going through, right? They're dealing with that struggle. That's why we're offering our services. That's why we're showing up to help them to sell them a product or whatever it may be. So if we can share that struggle to solution model in the way that we craft our story, it just changes the dynamic of how it's received. It makes it much more actionable because we engage with it. So I think there's a lot of ways that, we can break that down and, over 60 or 90 minutes when I'm in front of an audience, we can go a lot deeper. But that simple idea, I'll tell you where it became obvious to me. There was a couple of years ago, I was telling a story to my kids one night just before they're going to bed. And they asked me to tell them a story about the Smurfs. And I don't know if you remember those little blue creatures. They were on kind of a kick where I was making up Smurf stories for them. And I was tired, and I just told this quick little story. And my 3 or 4-year-old at the time, Tanner, he goes, "Dad, that's not a story. There's no bad guy." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "There's no bad guy. That's not a story. That was boring."
Out of the mouth
of babes. And I sat there and thought about it, and I go, "That's right. There was no struggle in that, right? There was nothing engaging. I mean, if we went and saw a movie and it was about a guy that just merrily skipped through life and everything worked out perfect, we would leave and go, that was the stupidest movie I've ever seen."
Boring. Yeah.
And yet in business, that's how we tell most stories, and we miss the emotional connection that we're speaking to human beings. We're emotional beings, and we've got to relate and connect in some way and keep them engaged. And that struggle to solution model makes all the difference.
Now, is that the most common, the most prevalent way to do it in your experience?
In terms of following that model?
Yes.
Yes, it is. More often than not, if you were to look at it. Now, there's different nuances in terms of how it goes, but typically an influential story will have a struggle, a challenge, a conflict, something that is overcome. And it's the arc of that seems to create the tension, the engagement, the anticipation that really moves people emotionally.
Interesting. Now, tell me about, because you've done a lot of speaking on that particular subject. What stands out in your mind where someone came up to you that you just really made a difference to help them with their company or whatever? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I just because it was fresh, I got an email yesterday from a financial advisor who I spoke to their company about a year ago, and then they brought me back and did a little bit more in-depth training. So I did a keynote the first time around, and then we did a little bit like a half day, more intensive, breaking down their stories and help kind of coaching involved in it with a small group of the advisors. Mm-hmm. And he just emailed me yesterday and talked about his business is up tremendously. He said, he'll do somewhere in the realm of $1 million more this year than he's done in previous years, which is awesome. But what was cool is he talked about the genuine connection that he's making with his clients and how much more of a relationship he feels like he has with them, which is awesome.
Do you know how he sort of created? Did he tell them his story? Or
part of it comes down to his story for sure. So in that realm, with that group, as we went deeper, talked a lot about their story and how they differentiate themselves. Think about there's, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of financial advisors there are. And in essence, they all have access to the same product. So how do they differentiate themselves that I should work with person over that person, right? So learning to tell their story, but then also learning how to communicate their strategy, their products, and what they're presenting in a way that is understandable. I mean, in that world, you can get lost in, like so many worlds, with acronyms and concepts that are just foreign to people. It's hard to understand. And so how do we simplify and use metaphors and create bridges for people to really understand exactly what you're trying to say? So I think it's a combination of the two.
So the book that you wrote on the power of storytelling, does it have techniques to do that?
It does, yes.
Okay. I made mention, too, you have a book called The 2 Most Important Days of Your Life. That's a killer title because it makes you very curious what that is. You care to elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. This is a book that just came out last May, and I co-authored it with 2 other speakers and authors, Don Yeager and Chad Hymas. It's the only book I've written that's a fable, so it's just a great story. I obviously believe in storytelling, and it's a great way to teach. And the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you discover why. And so this is a leadership fable that really strikes at the heart of some really pertinent questions on your purpose and your passion and the difference you want to make in the world. And it's a great little read. It's fun and it's engaging, and the feedback we've gotten has just been tremendous. It's an awesome story.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Now, listen, I know people are going to want to know how to get a hold of you for further information, wanting you to speak and such. So how do they do that?
My website is tybennett.com, tybennett.com, and all my contact information is there, as well as, bio, video, all the other things you'd want to find. Okay.
Well, Ty, thank you so much for pulling back the curtain and showing us about your speaking business and how you're helping people. That was fascinating information.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.